Formula 1 looks like it could be heading towards another era of domination. After watching Mercedes do it for 7 years, many fans were ready to see a battle at the front of the grid each year, but that isn't what is happening. The excitement of 2021 is just a long-forgotten memory now, and the sport needs to start asking itself, what can we do? Toto Wolff has an idea that might shock you, and also a warning to Formula 1, the FIA and the other teams. Let's get started. The place to start is definitely with the current uncompetitive state of the championship. Last season could have been a relatively close battle between Ferrari and Red Bull. Actually, I'll go as far as saying it should have been a close battle. Ferrari had everything they could have wanted to take the battle to Red Bull all season. They started the season the stronger of the two teams. Their car was faster. Charles Leclerc took pole position in 6 of the first 8 races. At the start of the season, they could match Red Bull on race pace as well. They just absolutely bottled it from that point on. You all know about the Ferrari pit wall being clowns, but it was the development of the car that really screwed Leclerc. Ferrari's one weakness early in the season compared to Red Bull was their tyre wear. They ate up tyres far too quickly, but they never managed to fix that. In fact, they didn't seem to fix anything on the car all year. None of the upgrades they bought got them any closer to Red Bull, and by the summer break, they decided to stop upgrading the 2022 car and focus on 2023. So while Max and Red Bull did stroll to both championships in the end, there was potential for a title battle. This year though, things are very different. Red Bull are comfortably the best team on the grid. They've absolutely nailed the design brief in the current regulations, and the rest of the grid have not done a good enough job. The lack of a title contender isn't Red Bull's fault, it is the other 9 teams that are to blame. This is where Toto Wolff comes in. His Mercedes team dominated the sport for 7 years. In 2014 and 2015, they won all but 3 races. In 2016, they won all but 2. Ferrari's resurgence with Sebastian Vettel in 2017 and 18 made the seasons a little closer, but in 2019 and 20, Mercedes dominated again. It wasn't until 2021 that Mercedes were really challenged for a driver's title. Asked if he believed the sport would see a convergence within the current aerodynamic era, like in 2021, Wolff told the media, "There is always the risk if you look at these cycles that if a team is so far ahead, they were about 20 seconds ahead of Leclerc in 40 racing laps. That is half a second per lap. At least we have seen that they were pushing, so that is the real pace. But half a second is quite a long way to go. So we either have to do a better job, all of us together to catch them up, or change the regulations. And I don't think we should be doing the second one. I think we just need to win on merit. And winning on merit means being more clever and having a steeper development slope than Red Bull. This is the problem the sport faces. The other 9 teams on the grid simply have to do better if they want to challenge Red Bull. During Mercedes' era of domination, the sport was against stepping in to change the rules to help the other teams catch up. I know things like Mercedes' dual-axis steering or DAS were banned, but Red Bull's domination at the moment isn't due to inventive gimmicks like DAS. As far as we can tell, they've just done a better job of their overall car design than everyone else. Toto Wolff's comments might come as a shock to some fans who would just prefer to see closer racing, but this is the sport. When someone nails the car design, the onus is on the others to catch up. So what can the rest of the grid do to catch up to Red Bull? Assuming there isn't something else going on underneath the car, the obvious thing is to take inspiration from the RB19's rear end and Red Bull's triple DRS system. The straight-line speed of the Red Bull RB19, particularly with the DRS open, has been a big talking point this season. As Lewis Hamilton put it, "I don't know why or how, but he came past me with serious speed." I won't do a complete breakdown of the Red Bull package and how its efficiency is far greater than the rest of the grid. It's long-winded, complicated, and if you really want to know, there are plenty of articles out there that you can read on it. The quick summary though is that Red Bull's rear wing, beam wing and diffuser are all extremely efficient, and when the DRS opens up, the RB19 loses a higher percentage of its drag than the other cars on the track. When the DRS is closed, they're still producing less drag than anyone else, allowing them to set the fast lap times they have been all season. It isn't just Red Bull that were the problem in Azerbaijan though. The whole race was a bit of a bore, and Toto has had plenty to say about that as well. It was not a thriller, the Mercedes team principal said. No overtaking, even with a big pace difference, made it not great entertainment. Even if you are within 0.2 seconds, it's nearly impossible to overtake unless the other driver makes a mistake. I was hyped for Baku. I think the circuit looks great on the TV. The fact there was only one practice session meant that things could have been mixed up in qualifying, and we could have seen some excitement. Friday definitely was exciting. Plenty of things went wrong for various teams in practice and qualifying. But when we got to the actual racing on Saturday and Sunday, everything was very tame. Wolff stopped short of saying the new rules introduced in 2022 were at fault. After a race weekend like this, we mustn't talk it down overall and say it is the wrong direction and we need to change completely, he said. It is more about asking why wasn't it entertaining and revisit it. We need to look at how we can avoid a boring race. The event in Baku was the first run to a revised sprint format. It introduced a second qualifying session that decided the grid for the sprint, which has been separated out entirely from the main Grand Prix. Previously, the result of the sprint decided the grid for the main race. The sprint format has been met with a mixed response. Red Bull's Max Verstappen said he felt the whole idea should be scrapped, while other drivers said they liked the new structure for the weekend, even if they wanted it to be limited to just a handful of events a year. Wolff pointed out that the only action close to the front was a collision between Verstappen and Mercedes' George Russell that ended with the drivers having a verbal altercation in the pit lane. Wolff said, "We have to analyse the weekend with the sprint format, whether there are positives that we can take out, but in the end it all comes down to the racing. It needs the tough battles, and the highlight on Saturday was George and Max being able to battle it out, and in the Grand Prix there was none of that. If the sprint isn't to blame for a tame weekend, then what went wrong in Baku that made it such an uninteresting race? Was it just Red Bull absolutely dominating the rest of the field, or was there something else going on? While as good as Red Bull are, at least in the other races this season there has been action behind them. In Baku, literally nothing happened. Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg didn't pit at the early safety car and went long on the hard tyres they started on. Behind them was Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda, whom both should have easily gone past the unpitted cars with the help of new, softer tyres, a slipstream and DRS. That didn't happen until lap 45 though. Last season, F1 introduced rules aimed at closing up the field and making overtaking easier. While it is still easier to follow than it was before the rule change, drivers had said that it is tougher this year as a result of the teams developing their cars. And while drivers have reported that the new rules have made it easier to follow than before 2022, this has been counterbalanced by a reduction of the slipstream effect behind another car. Wolff said, "You have two cars sailing off into the sunset on merit, and there is a 20-second gap, and I wouldn't know between Aston Martin and Ferrari and us who was quicker, because you're stuck where you are stuck, and that is pretty much it. Meaning they can't overtake each other." George Russell commented, "I don't know what it was like behind, but from my side, it looked like there was no overtaking." For some reason, the FIA have decided to shorten the DRS zones at the last two races, despite the drivers being vocal about the fact they cannot overtake as easily as last season. If we're going to have to watch Red Bull win every race for the rest of the season, we at least want to watch some competitive racing behind them. For the time being, the FIA extending the DRS zones will make the racing more exciting. Maybe for next season though, we will see technical regulation changes that allow for closer racing again, and maybe that will help reel in Red Bull. Do you agree with Toto Wolff that the other teams just need to do better? Or should the FIA make changes to make the racing closer and to stop Red Bull dominating? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.